they want to hold on to their religion so much because if the religion goes away, the world is chaotic. So even if they have to do crazy shit like kill people to believe in the story is so powerful that it'll cause people to do these horrible things.
Like I like how I love the way you explain that. Like, well, I was gonna say something really smart. Um, the stories give people meaning. The stories help to, the stories help people to explain life. Well, without those stories, everything is confusing and chaotic, as you mentioned, and everything is more difficult. People don't want that difficulty. They want the ease of being able to believe in something. So they'll go to great lengths to preserve what they believe, even if it means doing terrible things, just because, like, for example, like Hitler or whatever, which is a strong example, but like people were so fed up with how they were being treated, they'd believe anything he said, and they'd do anything he said just to keep him in power because it was easier.
Chris Horsch, welcome on the show.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
How do you feel about yesterday's matches down at where were we? We were at what WWPS were South. How do you feel about yesterday's meet?
I feel like, I mean, it's definitely a tale of two halves, right? I mean, we started off so strong with that first match, and then after, and just out of it, that it messed up the rest of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good day overall. I mean, it's been a pretty good season. I've been enjoying, wrestling with the squad. I've loved the whole team that we have here, and I'm happy we won that first match. And obviously, we wrestled some pretty good teams like Allentown, really high level team that we got the opportunity to wrestle. But I'm pretty happy about the day overall.
Yeah, I mean, you said it with Allentown. They're probably the best team we've wrestled so far. I mean, like, there wasn't a weak kid on their lineup. Everyone knew how to wrestle and was an athlete. So I feel like just keep going out there and competing with them was a good thing. But also, I mean, we didn't do super great, but just more things to improve on, really.
So you're coming out here as a freshman with a lot of experience. So you've been getting us some pretty big wins. You've been wrestling really well. What do you have envisioned for yourself in the future? Like you're still a freshman. You have a lot of opportunity to grow and see where this team can get by the time you're a senior. So what do you have envisioned for yourself for the next few years?
I mean, obviously being captain would be cool, but that's a lofty goal. I just want to help the team in any way I can. So if that means I obviously need to get better. I mean, everyone can always get better, but like I've won, you say I've got some big wins, but I've also lost a lot of matches. So I think I need to work on even like, I mean, I'm a good wrestler, but I'm not a great wrestler. So, I mean, I know what I'm doing, but I need to work on putting into practice in matches and getting those wins against tougher opponents for sure.
What are some of the specific parts you want to work out, right? You mentioned that you're a good wrestler, but not a great wrestler. What do you think are the things you might need to level up to the next stage of becoming the great wrestler that you envision?
I mean, how specific do you want me to be?
Take it, that's yours.
All right. I mean, the biggest thing is clearly how strong I am. I mean, I'm wrestling juniors and seniors a lot of the time, and everyone at this weight class is much stronger than me, so it makes wrestling tough. But I mean, like just specific wrestling things, I can't score off a front head. My shot defense has been poor to start off the season. Um, a lot of the times I get out on bottom, but I've been getting cradled a lot, and I'm struggling to break those grips, which goes back to the strength, but also moving and not constant movement on bottom has been an issue. I mean, on Wednesday I got pinned by that kid, and he held me down for solid 3 minutes straight before he pinned me, and that's something I definitely like when the kid's stronger than me, just still being able to get up. Um, my tie-ups in neutral, I can keep going. My tie-ups in neutral, I feel like I often get controlled and I don't have control of the match. Um, and then like my aggression, I'd say, which sounds weird, but I wrestle very timid. Well, not very timid, but I'm always waiting for them to make a move, and I feel like that often costs me, especially like for example, in that match on Sunday, my second match, the kid I scored first, but only because the kid messed up his move, and then he shot faster than me, and he scored and got in again, which led to me getting pinned. So I need to start taking control of the matches, I'd say.
Yeah, well, it's good that you're very self-critical here, looking at all the pieces you need to do to improve. And I think you'll definitely have so much opportunity, right? Like the strength piece you mentioned, that's really easy to fix. You'll start lifting, you'll start spending time in the off season. So you have a lot of time to develop that piece. And that front head piece. I mean, we've been spending so much time on the front head because it's such an important piece. Like I know myself, like there's like I only started wrestling very recently, right? But I think more recently you're starting to pick up like these small things that go into it. Like just the idea that you have to put pressure into their back is like so obvious, but it's such a critical piece of like all these different things. But there's so much that goes into it, and there's so much that you can just keep adding and adding, and there's so much more that the whole level of wrestling gets to.
And I mean, I appreciate that you say that you keep adding and adding because I feel like sometimes one of the biggest mistakes everyone makes in wrestling is they focus on doing one thing well, when wrestling is putting together so many different things to win matches. But I feel like a lot of times, especially kids, especially I myself do this a lot. I'll do one thing. If I'm on top, I'll just do a chop. If I'm in neutral, I'll just do a collar tie. If I'm on bottom, I'll just do a stand up. And I'll do parts of the stand up really well and I'll miss key aspects. Like you said in that front head, putting pressure on their back. If you put pressure on their back, but then forget to move them around or forget to crush them down like that, or just forget to block the arm or something small like that, you won't score. You have to, a lot of wrestling is just putting stuff together. And I feel like that's something I do struggle with. Like not even chain wrestling, but doing every part of a move, all the small details add up. And if you miss enough of the small details, it hurts you, especially in matches that are close.
Have you enjoyed the season so far? What are the best parts of the season, at least your first year here at Petty?
I mean, I gotta say that the best part so far was that Saturday when we won all three matches. That was really cool. I mean, like to start off that was our those are our second, third, and fourth duels of this season. I mean, to go out and win three like that, that had a team riding high. I mean, regardless of how we did for the rest of the season, we could always look back and be like, well, we started good, so we know where we were, what went wrong. And also, I mean, like, it was such a cool feeling. Because I feel like that's the proudest Coach Frank's been of us all year. Because I feel like that was the only time where we really put everything together. And it's weird because it was so early in the season. But I feel like ever since then, we've been missing something that we weren't missing on that day.
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces that are important because it's also important to note like the level of the teams that we're facing as the season progresses as well. We did have a lot of teams that are more about our level and like less than our level more in the beginning of the season that kind of grouped together the way the scheduling worked out. But I will say that in the last 2.5 years that I spent wrestling here, I think the West Ham match is the time where I think Coach Frank had probably the least criticism for us as a team. Like it's always like there's some piece that he's bringing up that we can improve here, we can improve here, but I think West Ham was such a special day because not only did we wrestle well, we also wrestled tough, and I also wrestled pretty well. And there's so many different pieces that came together in that outcome, which is what made West Ham so special. But even though we've maybe lost that winning streak, there have been so many other aspects of the last most recent matches as well that we may not be winning, but I think we're also wrestling some pretty high level teams, and we're able to work different things and keep improving as a team as a whole. And we'll have a lot more opportunities as season goes on. Mercer County is this weekend. I'm excited for that. I think we have a meet on Tuesday as well now. It was on the calendar, but I think he mentioned that when we were leaving yesterday. But yeah, and we'll also get to wrestle Blair at Maples, which is always fun, getting swept. But it's gonna be a fun season. It's gonna be gone before you know it. That's another thing that he mentioned yesterday, which kind of hit me that there's moments like the last few weeks where it'll feel like so long and so grueling, but before you know it, it's gone. It's like where to go.
I mean, you mentioned that like this season really hasn't felt long for me so far. I mean, everything is just flying by. It's only been what, 10 weeks? 6 weeks?
Yeah, something around that. Yeah.
So it hasn't been very long, and I feel like certain moments have felt long, but on the season as a whole, if I reflect back on it now, it's just been like that. And I mean, Mercer counties are coming up, prep qualifiers aren't far after that either. And I mean, then the season's just over. And I mean, it's crazy that my freshman year's not freshman year, my freshman season's almost done like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's gone by fast. I think my sophomore year when I first came here, it felt like pretty slow and everything. Even last year felt quick, and even this year now. The fact that January is almost over, like this thick of the season. But yeah, man, I mean, that's how life be, right? Things will just keep moving along, and sometimes things will be taken away from you and you won't even realize it until they're gone. Like the wrestling showers, then I'll never shower there again. Just crazy to think about.
It is crazy how they took our showers. I mean, like, do we ever get like a Y for that? Because I was just so.
Well, my thing is that they're renovating the upstairs, what do you call it, gym, right? The fitness room. And what I think is happening is that they had to move one of the pipes around, or they had to like remove some of the pipes from the walling and the sewage system or whatever. And because of that, there's no running water in the shower. That's what I think, because they're not renovating the showers or anything, right? So it's pretty sure it's that. I don't think it's the cockroach infestation that's going around either, but it's probably just because of the renovations in the gym, which I'm excited about. I love that gym. You never got a chance to lift over there, but it's by far like I've lifted at a lot of gyms, like Petty Gym, gyms near my houses. But there's such a interesting vibe that Petty Gym used to give here that was so unique to it. Um, Maybe just having all your friends around you in the same gym, but also just the whole way it was designed, right? It was just a big, spacious room. Everyone out there lifting every day. It was such a fun vibe. Which, I hope I know the renovations will be cool. They'll have two floors, they'll have new equipment and everything, but I don't know if they're able to match that vibe, the vibe that we got originally. But
Yeah, well, I never got to experience it, but everyone always talks so highly of the gym. So when I went and like going into this year, when I heard they were renovating it, I was honestly confused because I mean, it looked really cool when I walked in just on tours and revisit day, and then everyone always was like, "Oh, the Petty gym's amazing. Oh, it's so good." And it was weird, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna be renovating the gym, and you won't have it for your freshman year or forever, however long it's gonna take." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's great."
yeah, I mean, Petty got money, so they might as well upgrade, they renovate. I mean, I'm sure it'll be a good renovation. I'm sure the gym will be even cooler because when they renovate Swig over there, I mean, you probably haven't seen it before the renovations. Have you been in Swig a lot recently, or?
I've been in Swig recently. I saw it like right at the tail end of the renovations, but I never saw it before it.
Yeah, some of those new rooms, like the art gallery, the giant the Ding Music Hall, like they've done some pretty good work over there. Like it's pretty remarkable, and I'm sure that they keep going around, keep upgrading this campus. I mean, people I think fail to realize how beautiful Petty campus really is. Like it's sometimes we'll go to some of these wrestling meets and we'll drive back and I'll be looking at the window like, damn, I go to school. Like it's such a beautiful campus to me. It's honestly amazing that we go here.
I mean, yeah, I feel so blessed to go to a campus, to go to a school with a campus like this. I mean, like we were in West Windsor, and West Windsor is a nice town, right? Like it's not a like a bad place, but their high school, nothing compared to Petty. And I mean, even other private schools, most of them are not even close to how nice Petty is. And Petty keeps getting that's part of what I love about Petty so far is everything just seems to be always getting better and better. Like I mean, they never settle for anything. If something is wrong, they will fix it. Even if something's not wrong, but it could be better, they will put whatever needs to be put into it to make it better. Unless it's the cockroach infestation in the showers.
Yeah, because I was about to say there's some things that have been delaying for a while, especially when it comes to Avery, the dorm I live in. Like the toilet was broken for months. The showers there just don't even work anymore. So I mean, there's some things that kind of dust below the table, but overall, yeah, I definitely agree with you. But I have in front of me 8 of your biggest life lessons. So,
Okay. I think I put 9, so I'm curious as to which of the 8 you chose.
well, actually, I chose like some from the first list you gave me, but I also kind of chose some other ones from other questions as well. So I kind of grouped them together to make this very comprehensive list here. But there were some that were pretty interesting. So we're gonna go through as many of these as we can in about an hour. Um, so I'll say one. You can talk about it. We'll have a conversation about it, and we'll see where it goes and how many we can get through. So the first one, 98% of people are stupid.
I put that in as a quote from my father. Lovely man, as you can maybe tell from. Now, I don't know. He's always said that just as like whenever I ask why someone did something like that, like when I was younger, and he was like, and he whenever he couldn't explain anything, like because like people are just being weird, he's like 98% of people are stupid. You can't judge them for that. And I don't know. It's just such an interesting way to look at life. It's like that's not how I look at life. I don't believe 98% of people are stupid, but I think it's just such a like if someone is a little smarter than average. I mean, my dad's a smart guy, but he's no Albert Einstein that he can say that about people. That I think it's just so interesting that just a little bit of intelligence has put him on like a high horse like that. And I mean, some people aren't the smartest. I can say that with full confidence, but I don't know, it just feels so judgmental that I thought it was just interesting to include.
Well, I think when you say 98% of people are stupid, it also is important to like see what do we define as stupid, right? Because I think the word intelligence, right? The word being smart is so fluid of a term that it means different things to different people, right? A student going to a highly academic school might mean stupid as like your grade, right? Someone else might define stupid by like your knowledge and how to conduct and live a meaningful life, right? Someone else who might be stupid, like will look at other people wasting their time and think they're being stupid for wasting time. Like I think the word stupid is such a difficult term to work with because we don't have a clear definition of it. But how would you say you look at the word stupid or intelligence, or how would you define being intelligent?
I mean, I think a lot of intelligence isn't what you know, it's more how you learn and the choices you make. So I think like intelligence has like two branches for me. It's how you like how fast can you pick things up? Like if you don't know a lot of stuff, I'm not going to say you're not intelligent because if you can learn stuff quickly and figure things out, I think that's like the mark of an intelligent person is how quickly they can understand new concepts. And also, I mean, like the choices people make, like there's like that's more of an academic almost. Like some parts real life, some parts academic. But I think the more real life, everyday version of intelligent is just the choices you make, like how you can look at the world and decide what to do. I think the people who are making the right choices with their time, their money, um, stuff like that, those are the smartest people, not the people who know a million facts about X, Y, and Z.
I like how you mentioned that intelligence is defined by your ability to learn, right? And I think a lot of people look at school systems and stuff that they're learning to use this information, right? That when am I ever gonna have to use this in my life? Whenever am I ever gonna have to use this? And I think when I look back to like the time I've spent in school, I'd say that I the ability to learn is really the skill that I've picked up because sure, the things I might be learning actively may not be the things I will go on to use like fundamentally for the rest of my life. But the fact that I'm able to learn something fast or I'm able to like train myself how to learn something, when it comes down to the wire, when I have to learn something quick, then you're gonna need that skill because the things that are currently in our world right now, whether it be like computer science is like the big thing or like AI is a big thing, they're not going to be the big thing 10 years from now. There's going to be something else. And the ability to pick up and learn it fast and like ride the wave of change. So you're always flexible and you're not like tied to ways of doing things, the ability to just keep learning fast. I think I am grateful for school for that piece, right? I think it's very easy to look at time we spend in our life as like useless, that, oh, I just use school to get this, go to this good college, get this good job. I think there are pieces you're picking up along the way, right? That the fact you're learning these skills along the way that might subconsciously be altering you as a person that you don't even realize. But 100%, I agree that the ability to learn something is a form of intelligence.
I mean, especially at a school like Peddie, where I mean, I complain that a lot of the classes, the teacher gives you a little bit of information and wants you to learn it yourself. But I mean, that's more useful in life than almost anything else is if you can get a little, if you only need a little bit to be able to learn something, that'll get you very far. Especially as you're right, things change so quickly now. Technology and stuff like that advances every day into new directions. 10 years from now, who knows what we'll have to know, but school has trained me really to just pick up new stuff. And I mean, like, I can't tell you what I learned in seventh grade history class, but it taught me to to take key concepts from what I'm learning and to be able to apply them to different things.
So you mentioned you had like two branches of intelligence. So the first one was the ability to learn. What was the second one again?
I said it was how you make choices. Like,
Right. So choice making is a very difficult thing, I think, in a modern world, and it's hard to really define like how to even make a good choice, right? So I mean, I know you're young, we're both young, but in your own life experiences, how do would you define like a good way of making choices or how we can improve our ability to make choices?
I mean, my parents tell me all the time that I don't make the best choices, but you know, I don't know if I'm the guy to ask. But okay, this is like how I make a good choice. It's it's a mix of what makes me happy and what does it accomplish for me. Because like if I was always choosing 100% what to do that'll get me the furthest in life, like I could have spent 12 hours today studying for the next 3 units in each class, and I could have went home yesterday and done the same thing, and I can do that every night. But doing that isn't a good choice because it wouldn't make me happy at all, and I'd be burnout, and it would end up hurting me in the long run. And at the same time, making choices that would just make me happy will end up hurting me in the same way. Because even in that moment, if it does make me happy, something doing something stupid because it makes me happy will just hurt me later. So I think making a good choice is mixing pleasure with um, productivity.
Yeah, so really living in that gray area zone type thing, right? Um, I think difficulty with making choices is that there's so many different parts of our brain and so many different factors we're considering that it leaves us in a zone of we don't know where to go, right? Because we'll have emotions in our brain telling us this feels good right now, and then we'll have some feeling telling us maybe I should think about this in the future, and you'll think about this other thing your parent told you. And there's so many nuanced factors that when it comes to decision making, most people just fail because it's hard to say like, should I do this thing here or should I do this thing here? But I think another thing that contributes to why decision making is so difficult is just that you can't even trust your own memories because sometimes your own memories and thoughts are not even an accurate representation of what reality is, right? I think something very recently I learned that was very interesting is how your memories and the thoughts in your mind actually evolve with time, right? So your memory is not necessarily a accurate representation of what happened in the past, that this memory is exactly what happened. It is more what your mind tells yourself about that event to kind of keep you safe, right? Which is a big thing with trauma, right? People go through traumatic events and they will develop new memories in their mind that were never there in an effort to protect them from ever experiencing something like that again, right? For example, someone got in a car crash and their memories will be altered to make them feel in a way as if they've always hated being in cars, they've always hated traveling places. And they'll even tell that to you. They'll be like, oh, I never even enjoyed driving in cars. I never even want to go in that again. But you can't even trust your own mind because your mind is actively altering your perception of reality to the fact that it's like, if you can't even trust your own memories and your own mind and your own thoughts, well, how do you make a good decision, right? And I think the way that I've kind of dealt with that dilemma recently is that I've put decision making really into two boats of mental thought, right? There's some deeper wisdom in me telling me that this decision is the right decision for achieving this goal. And there's some emotional side of me that's clinging to some thing that feels good or something that out of fear or insecurity is clinging to this thing, right? And the more and more I can use that as a mental model of saying that I want to lean away from the emotional side and lean toward the deeper wisdom side of things, I found that my ability to make decisions, even on a small scale, like do I want to go eat breakfast now or do I want to first finish this work, right? Even like smaller decisions like that, I feel like just finding ways to access the deeper wisdom in you and like using that as a guiding force to guide you towards some goal has really helped me a lot in that decision making piece.
And you mentioned that there's deeper wisdom for smaller decisions. But as you learn to make smaller decisions, right, it'll help you make the bigger decisions because you know what you need to think. So as you practice it with smaller things, it'll become easier for the bigger ones. And you mentioned leaning away from the emotional boat. Like how far would you say you're leaning? Like would you say you're really like 100% away? Because I mean, you do need emotions for some decisions. They do play into life as a whole. And I think I read this once that if you didn't have emotions on a lot of decisions, you just couldn't make them because there's no logic behind smaller decisions. You need emotions because they not convince you, but they give you a reason to pick. Like the clothing you're wearing right now. That's not a logical, like there was no logical reason for you to put on that black sweater other than the warmth, but you could have put on a hoodie, could have put on, you had a coat, you could have just worn the coat. The emotions drove you behind that. So how far away from emotions would you say you're leaning?
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think when you bring that up, it really emphasizes the fact that we shouldn't just make life an algorithm and ignore emotions, right? Because I think emotions are our our main consciousness and our main piece of life as a whole, like experiencing emotions, right? So if you're just gonna say no emotions, like what does that really mean, right? So I do think that leaning into emotions can sometimes be helpful, but it depends on what type of decision you're making, right? If it's a decision like which shirt do I like better, I'm not gonna sit down and think that I have to trust my deepest wisdom for what shirt to make because I don't think that's um a decision of high output or high importance, right? That if it's a minuscule decision about like I know I mentioned small decisions, right? But if it's something more about there's certain times I think you can lean into the emotional side without having to like face major consequences, right? But I think this mindset of stepping away from emotions really happens when you're trying to make bigger decisions for your life, right? And I think, for example, like choosing what school to go to or choosing what city to live in, those are big decisions where sometimes leaning to emotion can help you, and so maybe that helps some people. But I think the more and more I realize it, the more and more when I have a decision where I'm totally lost and I don't know where to go, using that as a mental model has seemed to kind of help me in that way.
I mean, you mentioned picking a school to go to. You're applying for colleges now. Do you know what you're going to which school, or do you not know yet?
Not yet. I applied to a school for early decision and I get into Duke. But I have like a bunch of schools, really like EAs, RDs. So I have one of them back that I got into. But I guess with the process for that, my main goal is to see where I get in and then go into the decision making factor. Like I've already done the work to kind of outline a list of schools to apply to, but I haven't thought about the decision making for that yet just because I don't know the options I have. And I feel like the options I have will greatly influence the decision I make, right? Because I might be thinking about factors like academically, but also socially and trying to find that balance. But, that's definitely something I'll be considering in about 2, 3 months from now for sure.
Yeah, I mean, but that does have an emotional. You have to say there's an emotional play. Like you're a border. Where are you originally from?
Not far, like 40 minutes from here.
So when picking a college, will how far away you are from your family affect that decision? Like that's an emotional piece in a way, because I mean it's not just missing. I mean, some of it is it's easier to be near a family, but some of it is you will miss them if you're halfway across the country and you can't see them.
Now, I would argue that I think that is a logical decision too, because I think logical decisions can also be predicting your future emotion, right? That's logic as well, right? I think when I say emotional, I mean my current emotional state, right? If I think that going to this college will affect my emotional state later because I'll be this distance far away from my family, I would argue that also fits into the logical piece of it when I'm considering a decision as well.
I didn't think of it like that. That's interesting. So you'd say that not that emotions is only how you're feeling right now.
I guess in the context, like when I made the statement of emotion versus deep emotion, I'd say I define emotions as like my current emotional state, right? Because I don't think my goal is to discount emotions in general. Because I do think emotions contribute to us and how we live our life, right? Like emotions like happiness, fear, pain, like they're all emotions that make life good, right? And make life bad, or they impact our state of being a lot. So I don't think my goal is really to just eliminate emotions and pretend they don't exist, but more that you can even look at emotions from a logical perspective as well. But not leaning to like, for example, I know that if I finish my work and then I go hang out with my friends, I'll feel great, right? But if I delay my work, it'll only make me feel worse in the long run, right? So my current emotional state might be, let's not work right now, let's go do something else. But my logic is telling me that I can do the work first and then hang out with them afterwards, right? You might argue that hanging out with them is an emotional thing, but it's more that my current emotional state is kind of pulling me away from what I already know is the correct thing. So I'd say more like that.
So like it's more of like a less of an emotion and logic thing, more of a present future thing. Because like I know what you mean when you say if you delay something, even if it makes you happy in the moment, it also hangs stress over your head for the rest of until you finish it, which is something I do a lot. I've spent a lot of my life procrastinating work, and it's a real issue that I'm working to fix. But it doesn't, even if it makes me feel better for a moment, I tell myself in my head it's going to make me feel worse, and then I spend the rest of the time procrastinating, feeling worse. But some part of my brain still doesn't want to do the work. It's weird. It's weird how decisions are made like that. Even if something's making you unhappy, if you're lying to yourself and telling yourself, like what you mentioned with the memory, your brain will alter itself to make to protect you. I mean, it's almost something like that where I mean, I'm unhappy with what I'm doing, but I'm telling myself that it's making me feel better. And then it isn't making me feel better, but I still can't stop myself.
Why do you think procrastination is such a big issue? I mean, everyone deals with it, right? Everyone's always delaying things. Why do you think it's such a big issue?
I mean, on some part, people just don't want to work. Like, I mean, I understand that I need to get things done, And I understand that it'll make me feel better after I get done. But like, for example, if I have an hour of math homework, I understand that I'll feel better after finishing it, but during that hour that will suck. And I want to delay and avoid, which is sort of like that present thing. I want to delay the pain and the anguish. That's a bit dramatic, but I want to delay how uncomfortable doing that math homework will make me for as long as possible, which I think is probably what it is, at least for me, but I think that's probably what it is for most people. They want to push the emotions of right now. They want to keep them happy and push the painful ones into the future, even if it hurts the future.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you say that you want to delay it's gonna suck for an hour and I want to delay that as much as possible. I don't think that's the fact that it will fundamentally suck for an hour is true. I think for the most part, it sucks because it's grown to be such a big problem in our mind, right? Our mind is telling us that this thing is so bad, but in reality, like you probably felt it phases before, right? Where you're delaying this homework because it seems so bad in your mind, but when you start working on it, it slowly over time is like it's not even as bad as you thought, right? And for that reason, I think one of the biggest sources of procrastination is just unclarity. It's a lack of knowledge. It's about not knowing how big the problem actually is. Because when you start it, I think the hardest part is starting it, right? Because you've built up all this inertia and resistance against, like, I don't want to work on this right now. But the second you like write 10 words of that essay or whatever that might be, the second in your mind, it doesn't even seem that bad anymore. Like just getting it started and delaying the time between I have to do this and the time I started. Because then once you actually get it done, it's nowhere near as like bad as you thought it would be. So I think that at least what I've seen, unclarity, like when I don't have a clear definition defined about what I actually have to do or how big the problem actually is, that's when I started procrastinating and push it back. Like I don't want to deal with this right now.
And you mentioned starting being the hardest part. I think a lot of the time people just don't know where to start. I mean, they built up a wall in their head of I don't know of they built up like such a force in their head against starting, and then which which makes procrastinating seem so much better because starting seems so difficult. But if people had like a clear way of starting anything, like if you're confused on an assignment and you don't want to start it just because you don't know what to do, then the procrastinating is going to be so much worse because you don't want to do it, don't know how to do it, and you've made it seem a big issue, like a big issue in your head. So all of that combined makes procrastination worse. But I feel like if people, what you said, the lack of knowledge, people just had a clarity of what they needed to do, I feel like that removes like some of the power that procrastination will have over you. Just like like once you start, it's easy. Once you know how to start, it's easy. So starting really is the hardest part.
Yeah, and I think the piece you mentioned with having more clarity could help give procrastination less power over you. I think that's probably why most major projects are a source of procrastination, right? Like when you have an assignment due tomorrow, you'll probably get it done, right? Math assignment, they tell you do problems ABC or do problems ABC. But the real procrastination starts when you have an essay to write with a lot of unclarity about what it actually consists of your time and effort. Or you have this history project, which is like a 2 week project that you have so much leeway and freedom that you don't even know how to tackle it. I think if you can spend even just 10 minutes planning, it'll probably save you like hours of execution because if you can find like mental models and ways to make it seem less chaotic in your head, like give it some order. Like for example, some things I'll do is like uh, instead of saying that I have to write an English essay, which is like so vague and broad and makes no sense, I'll just say that I have to work on this essay for 3 hours total, like or 3 hours of deep work, I'll say, right? And then I put on my calendar that, okay, like Sunday morning, 1 hour of deep work on my essay, that's it. Right? I'm not telling myself to finish the essay or write the essay. I'm just gonna say that I don't care. I'm gonna sit down and work on it for an hour. And then over time, you start to realize like how much time things actually take you, right? If you know that essays in general take you 2 to 3 hours, and you'll know in your mind that, oh yeah, it's not that I have to write an essay which seems so dark and gloomy. I just have to sit down on my computer and do some task for 3 hours, right? And then you can find ways to break it up further, right? That okay, I'll make 3 phases of doing this. I have an outline phase and I'll just follow the outline and find ways to systemize it. That way you'll bring order to it. It won't be like this chaotic thing that's so confusing.
I mean, yeah, like you mentioned planning. I mean, if you spend 10 minutes just getting a topic to write down on top of that, I need to do 3 hours of work on this topic. I think you'll avoid, because I feel like with big projects or big essays, sometimes you'll go off in directions you don't want to. and then you'll spend an hour or even half an hour on work that didn't mean anything, and then you feel so discouraged that you don't want to continue on meaningful work, and then which might set you back in the loop of procrastinating it more and more.
Second one, making everyone happy is not only impossible, but will leave you drained and unhappy. I like this one. Tell me about it.
Okay, so like this is such an happiness is again such a vague thing like stupidity was in the first one. But like I mean happiness is just like a fulfillment, I guess. So trying to fulfill what everyone else around you wants is so difficult because sometimes people want conflicting things. Some people need your time even if you don't have time to give. Sometimes people need your help, your energy, your anything, and you can't give it. And even if you can give it, you need to save stuff for yourself, especially especially with how hard everything is. Like in this school with sports. I mean, I don't know, I'm just a freshman, so I'm talking to someone who's been through it, but like you know how hard this all was. If you spent 50% of, I assume you spent most of your energy doing things for yourself, no? So if you spent 50% of that trying to make everyone else around you happy, would you have been able to get where you are right now?
Yeah, not at all. And the reason I like this quote a lot is 'cause I think it does describe parts of my life as well. And, you know, it's it's hard to live for other people, right? And I think a lot of people fall in that zone of people pleasing, where they're so insecure about themselves that a lot of their happiness is forged into other people's opinions about them, right? And because of that, they'll spend a lot of time trying to give people time, and they won't have time themselves, but they'll give it to others who they don't really like in the first place in an effort to hopefully please them and make more people like them. Um, so yeah, I think it is a big problem, and you know, defining happiness is another one that you talked about. Like, what is really happiness, right? I think you defined it as fulfillment, but again, what is fulfillment? Like, it's such a vague term, and if if your sense of happiness is something that is colored through the eyes of others, then it'll be very hard to like ever find that true fulfillment piece.
I like how you said colored through the eyes of others. That's in such your happiness has to be your own. Like what you get, what brings you happiness into life has to be what brings you to happiness, not what makes everyone else around you happy. If you want something to make you happy and everyone in your life says it's a bad idea, like everyone in your life says it doesn't make them happy or it won't make you happy, but it does bring you happiness, you have to do it anyway. It doesn't matter what other people think about your happiness. It's just for you.
Yeah, I like that piece a lot because you'll have so many conflicting opinions on how to live a good life, right? Maybe you'll have this definition of like this is what will make me happy, but people, maybe parents, maybe friends are telling you that that's a very unconventional way to live. Maybe that's not the right way to live. But I think because of that, so many people just conform to normality. They conform to the conventional norm. And I think it's so easy to do that because we're so tribal in our nature that we want to be more like others, that whenever there's some quirk about us or something different about us, we see that as an inherently negative thing. But it's really those quirks and those strange things about us and those weird things that are not normal is what makes us abnormal in a good way, right? Because if you look at all the successful people that we all aspire to be, right? They all had qualities that made them essentially different from other people. And if you do what everyone else does, if you do what's conventional, if you do what normal people do, well, you'll end up like everyone else. And what is the average American's life like? They're fat and broken. Like if you follow the conventional definitions of success, then you'll just be average. And if you want to be more than average, then you're gonna have to embrace the fact that you can't conform to reality. You have to lean into your own definitions of happiness. But have you seen this play out at all in your own life? Or
You mentioned being average, like playing out. Like ignore your question? I'm sorry.
go ahead, go wherever you want, man.
Okay, you mentioned being average. I would say the average person isn't happy, right? Like I would say most of the world is somewhere from sad to blah. Like most people, like obviously millionaires and billionaires, people who stick out, people who are different, those are the happy ones. But you don't have to have I would say happiness isn't tied to success, like in that way. Like if you're people say money doesn't buy happiness. Money buys happiness. If you have a lot of money, you're probably going to be happy, even not because money inherently makes you happy. It gets rid of the things that make you upset. And at the same time, being normal might seem like it makes you happy, but it really being average, being the same means you're cutting out parts of yourself that would probably make you happy. Like I have a weird taste in music, I'll be honest. People, if they heard my playlist, they'd be like, "What is wrong with you?" But it makes me happy, so I don't care. Stuff like that, small stuff, even larger stuff, is how you have to live your life, or else you'll end up upset and well burnt out just from doing what other people want you to do because that's not what make because they think it will make you happy. People don't know what will make you happy. They know what they think will make you happy. They know what will make themselves happy for the most part, but they can't speak for you. So when people are talking about your happiness, generally don't listen to them because they're probably wrong.
Yeah, I think I like the piece that you mentioned that everyone is pretty much unhappy, right? Everyone's life goes from somewhere from sad to blah. And I think that category of people we talk about that are unhappy, I think it encapsulates even rich people, right? You mentioned that millionaires are happy because they've removed all the things that make them unhappy. I kind of disagree with that. Now, obviously, I'm not saying money is an inherently bad thing, and I think if you can make money, it can solve a lot of your money-related problems. But I think money and happiness are two separate things. And one of the reasons I think that is true is because I think as you gain more money, your expectations rise with that as well. I'll give you an example. I ordered Wawa for the wrestling meet yesterday. And I hopped in the shower. I was waiting for it to come. It's supposed to come as soon as I was done, like 5:26, 5:30 p.m. I come out the shower, it's delayed by 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm sitting there outside, like whatever, 10 minutes. Then it's 5:40, then it's 5:50, then it's 6 o'clock. And I was calling my dad, so it's whatever. And then I look at my phone, it's like almost 6 o'clock. It's been 30 minutes delayed. Like, where's my food? I see my dasher just sitting at the restaurant and I call him, and the problem was that the apparently Wawa never got my order through DoorDash. So the DoorDash guy was sitting there and the Wawa was like, we don't have the order, like we don't know what to tell you. So I had to call him up and cancel it and get the refund and everything. And I went and ate Peddie dinner. And I was walking back to get my dinner and I was thinking to myself, like, how can this be? Like we're living in such a society where food should be fast, it should be quick, it should come to me soon. I'm kind of pissed off. And then I think to myself that why am I so pissed off about the fact that my food didn't come? If you showed DoorDash to someone who's living 100, 200 years ago, they think we're living in heaven, that you can get instant access to anything you want, any food you want within 20 minutes for like $20 is almost insane. And someone 200 years ago would be happy with a slice of bread, who's going days without food, who's suffering what most of history people have suffered with lack of food, lack of ability to have things quick. And I think that made me realize that, sure, okay, we have access to things like DoorDash, we have so much money, we have all these things around us, yet we'll still find ways to be unhappy. We'll still, because our expectation rises with the money. Someone who has $1 million will also expect to get things that millionaires get, and when they don't get it, then the level of unsatisfactoriness rises with it. Now, I do agree with the fact that it will remove a lot of your problems. And we could say all this, but I think money is great, and I think we should all make a goal to make money. 100%. After we make the money, we should also find a way to find and be satisfied with it and not try to crave for more. But it's really finding that area between.
Yeah, you said expectations rise. I think a part of happiness is not expecting too much because sure you can want things in life, but and having dreams is definitely a good thing and having things you want is something you need from life or else you won't get anywhere. But as expectations rise, unhappiness and unsatisfaction also rises. That's true. So I think a part of it is as you progress in life is checking yourself, keeping yourself humble, checking your expectations to make sure you don't want more than life than what you need. And if you can keep your expectations in check, then happiness will come with it because you'll get everything you expect, everything you want. So what more could you need? And that's where happiness comes from. That's almost like the fulfillment I meant. When your expectations from life are fulfilled, you're happy because you don't want anything else.
Yeah, man, 100% agree. And personally, as a 17-year-old, I can't really say that I've figured this out myself. But, I think from my current understanding of it, as long as you're aware of it, as long as you're aware of the mental affliction that is the unsatisfactoriness in our nature, then you can always keep yourself in check and be like, okay, I know what my mind is doing again. Like as I did last night, right? I caught myself. I could have just felt like shit all evening, but then somehow I was able to catch myself in that moment because I'm aware of the mental affliction, right? I've read about this concept before, and if you watch videos like this, if you read these kind of concepts and you're aware of the fact that your mind isn't perfect, then you'll be able to catch yourself in these moments and find ways to be gratitude, even in the times when your wow order doesn't come. But yeah, man, let's go to the third one.
Yeah.
The biggest problem in the world today is blind faith in objectively bad things. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really 100% understand it. So if you can explain this, like the concept of blind faith in objectively bad things, start there.
Okay, so let me see if I can put this into words without getting political. Um, okay, so like I guess I'll use religion as an example because like religion isn't inherently bad, but like it can become bad. People will 100% follow a religion that they believe in no matter what happens. So like if tomorrow if the Pope was like, yeah, kill all people of this race and this gender and or you're a bad Christian, a lot of people will fully believe in that. And I think stuff like that is an issue in the world where people in power or people with money or people who are idols for the rest of the people can say a lot of things or do a lot of things and people will fully back them. People will fully believe everything they say, even if anyone from an objective lens could tell you that it was bad, people will still follow them. They don't care. And I think that's an issue because it gives the people in power or the ideas in power, the concepts in power, too much control over the world.
Yeah, man. Humans as a species, I think there's one reason why they destroyed every other species and they rule the world today. Because it's true, right? Humans rule the world. I'd say that I'm pretty sure like the majority of animals that exist in this world are domesticated. Like the number of wild animals is like right? Humans rule the world. Why? Why? Like we're not that special, right? Human versus bear, bear wins. Why do humans win? There's one reason humans won, and that is their ability to believe in things that don't actually exist. Their ability to come up with stories in their mind of imaginary things, tell each other stories, and the stories are the reason we're able to cooperate, right? So humans have the ability to believe in things that don't exist, right? For example, religion, right? Fundamentally, like we can't really say whether it exists or doesn't exist, but we're very able to create stories in our mind and tell each other the stories that we can all collaborate toward one thing. Most of the methods of cooperation in the world today, like the United States of America doesn't exist. The United States of America is a story that we all tell each other, that we all believe in the story, so it exists. And companies like Amazon doesn't exist. Like, what is Amazon? It's an idea. And we all believe in the idea. We all agree the idea is real in our minds. So we'll all follow through and allow us to collaborate together. If we can make a really good story, thousands and millions of individual humans can come together and they can take over the world, right? Even if you go back to hunter-gatherer societies, like even before companies and countries existed, they were still telling each other stories and believing in stories on a much lower level. But that is why they're like 100 humans can collaborate in a tribe and go kill a couple elephants and eat them or whatever they used to eat. Woolly mammoths. I don't know if elephants they used to eat or they were like in my mind. But their ability to believe in stories is a huge strength. But as you mentioned, also a huge weakness because the world is chaotic by nature, right? And we are constantly striving to find meaning and happiness in this very confusing, chaotic world. And to deal with the chaos that is life in general, we need order. We need ways to make everything around us simpler. And if you can convince people to believe in one central story and it'll make life easier and simpler, and they can be like, oh, this is how it works, right? Then they'll all be like, okay, let's follow this thing, let's follow this religion. But one problem is that they're going to be so, every time they want to hold on to their religion so much because if the religion goes away, the world is chaotic. So even if they have to do crazy shit like kill people to believe in the story is so powerful that it'll cause people to do these horrible things.
Like I like how you I love the way you explain that. Like well, I was gonna say something really smart. Um the stories give people meaning. The stories the stories help people to explain life. Well, without those stories, everything is confusing and chaotic, as you mentioned, and everything is more difficult. People don't want that difficulty. They want the ease of being able to believe in something. So they'll go to great lengths to preserve what they believe, even if it means doing terrible things, just because, like, for example, like Hitler or whatever, which is a strong example, but like people were so fed up with how they were being treated, they'd believe anything he said, and they'd do anything he said just to keep him in power because it was easier. Believing what he said, believing his stories were easier than the chaos and uncomfortability of life.
Yeah, and as we talk about this idea of human nature, which I love a lot, we use religion because religion is the easiest example, right? It's the easiest way to show how humans can collaborate on a central story. Personally, I am a religious person despite these beliefs, and I do think that there is something bigger than I know like, humans like to make these stories and things like that. I don't think one fundamental religion has it all figured out, but I do believe that there is some central, some bigger power that has created everything that we cannot really comprehend as humans, but humans have along the way found ways to access it, whatever that higher power might be, whatever this deeper form of life might be. And they've tried to translate it into words, and out came all these religions, right? Of people trying to explain what this higher power kind of felt like. So I do think that religion, I don't want to people to get triggered by the fact that we're using religion as an example here. Like I am religious. I think that religion is also a great thing that can give you a lot of meaning in life. But religion is also a tool that a lot of people have misused in the past. 'Cause it's so easy to take the religion and use it in a way to control people. And if you look at all the churches of like 1500, 1600, when they're controlling the marriage laws and all that, it's a form of control as well.
Like like churches, like the Church of England used to be one of the biggest powers in the world because so many people believed in it and they could convince people to do anything they wanted. Stuff like that. I agree. Religion is a good thing. Religion oftentimes makes people act better than they would, even if people should be good people by nature, which is I believe people should be good by their own nature, but it gives people a reason to be good, which is something I can appreciate. And even if I'm not the most religious guy, I'm I think it's possible there's a higher power. I think it's possible there isn't. It doesn't affect my day-to-day life that way, but the way it brings people together can be such a force for good, but on the other side of that same coin, it could be such a force for bad and evil things that it just depends on how you use it. I think people by nature, not gullible, but like it's not easy to convince them of for a lot of people it's not easy to convince them of things that are outlandish, but if you can give someone a story that makes life easier, that makes life seem better, that makes what they're doing seem like it matters more, that gives you a lot of power over someone. And I think if you use that power right, you can do a lot of good or you can do a lot of bad.
Yeah, and I think the piece that it can be good or bad highlights the fact that how powerful stories are in general, right? A story is so powerful that it will make someone follow in line and do all these good things and be a good person. And it could also be so strong that it'll make someone just do something completely crazy, right? All right, number four, never assume anything about anyone.
Honestly, this is a lesson that I've learned mostly through sports, soccer and wrestling especially. I mean, like when you're sitting on the sideline or you're warming up for a tournament, you look around at everyone to see who you could be wrestling. And once you figure it out, you make a million assumptions about them. And I don't think maybe once or twice these assumptions have been true. But other than that, I'm usually wrong, which has affected how I've lived the rest of my life, which I guess training for the rest of your life kicking in there. Um, no, but I mean, like the way I just when I walk into a classroom with people, it's so easy to make assumptions of, or just a room full of people, it's so easy to make assumptions about them based on how they dress, how they're talking, how they're acting. But so often those assumptions could be wrong or based in bias that I've had to train myself not to trust them immediately and to wait longer to decide what I think about people.
Yeah, bro, 100%. Like when you mentioned that thing with wrestling, I 100% agree with that. Because I found that I love it more when I have no idea who I'm wrestling. No idea. I wrestle best when I have no idea who I'm wrestling, right? Because people will tell you so many stories that, oh, the guy you're wrestling is scrub. Oh, the guy you're wrestling is really good. Or we're about to wrestle this really, really good team. Or we're about to wrestle this really, really bad team. It doesn't change anything. Like having that information, you might think that it'll somehow help you perform better. For me, it just makes me get in my mind and impairs the way I wrestle, right? Like there have been teams that are technically really, really good teams that we've wrestled, that have gone out and like beaten their guy, even if that's like the one match, because the one guy in the wrestling wasn't as good as the team's level or capability, right? Which is why when people are like, oh, the next team of wrestling, like there've been teams we wrestle that are pretty bad, but there'll be that one guy on the team that can beat me. And there's teams that are wrestle that are really good, but there's the one guy on the team that I can beat them. So like that information that this team is such a good team, or this wrestler is such a good wrestler, that guy's a scrub, like it doesn't help me at all. It just confuses me more. And I think in a sport like wrestling, where there are so many factors to consider, the more simpler you can make it, the less factors you can consider in your mind. Like if you just tell yourself, I'm just gonna work my things, that's how you get the best performance, you know?
Like everyone says wrestling's an individual sport, and then people argue back it's a team sport. Wrestling is often easiest, at least for me, if I make it an individual sport. If I make it just about what I'm about to do on this mat right now, put everything that the team's done aside, know that they're behind me, but also know that what I'm doing is for me, it's just affecting me. Like that makes wrestling so much easier for me, especially especially in a match where it's close and my what I'll do actually will matter. Like if we need me to get a big win or if I just need to not lose, I just know going out and wrestling my stuff doesn't matter who I'm wrestling, doesn't matter what the situation is. I know I need to just do my thing or else I won't perform well.
Yeah, that's a mindset I use. I give it a name. Like let's call it do your job, right? People call it do your job, right? Because I don't know if I'd use the terminology that it makes it an individual sport. I still think that yeah, it's nice to say that oh we're all wrestling together. It's a dual meet, but focusing on just my match and just doing what you have control over, doing your job, it makes it seem like so much less like worse, right? Like when you're thinking of you have this big match coming up and like to make sure coach is doing his thing right and all the teammates are doing their thing right and everyone has that like don't worry about other people. Like it doesn't change anything. If you trust that everyone will do their job and then you do your job, they'll probably wrestle best because it takes the stakes so much lower, right? And it gives you more agency because you literally have in front of you what you have control over and you just do that.
Like, I mean, I go back to that Saturday when we lost 3 matches. That is the only time I'd really say where everyone fully did their job. Like every kid went out, won when they needed to, didn't get pinned when they needed to, pinned when they needed to. I don't think we've had another match where I can really say that everyone did their individual job. Sometimes as a team we've won or we've lost, but I wouldn't say we everyone did their job. So I think it's interesting how it is a team sport. It's fully a team sport. It's one of the most communal, like it nothing no other sport forms a community like wrestling does, but at the same time there's no other sport where you have to just do your job. So I think it's such an interesting dichotomy between the two of those two different ways of thinking about it that it's what makes wrestling so interesting as a sport.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. That West Ham day, we can keep coming back to it. It was clean. Like, we all did our job. It was something so beautiful about that.
West Town will look upon West Town 30 years from now, remembering.
All right, let's go to number five here. No one wants to be a joke, but a life without jokes is incomplete. Looks like you really like this one.
This is a quote from a song from, okay, it doesn't really matter where I got it from, but what I wanted to illustrate was the point that you need to be able to laugh at yourself. Life is so much harder when you're so worried about how you look in front of everyone and how serious and mature and everything, how you come off like that. Life is so much worse when everything everyone says affects you. When you learn to criticize yourself, to take what other people say and not let it get in your mind and affect you, everything becomes so much clearer and easier.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to come to that realization, right? It's easy to say, right? But I think it takes like life experience to really feel that. Um, I think when there's something a person wants to do, but they make an excuse for why they can't do it. If you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the reason why they don't want to do it, it's always comes down to the same thing. They're scared of what people will think about them. They're not even scared of failure, but they're scared of failure in front of the eyes of others, right? They're scared of their critical nature. And again, it's just a evolutionary flaw in our nature because, when we evolved, the only way we could survive is by collaborating with each other, right? If the tribe doesn't like you, the tribe thinks you're bad, they will leave you behind and you will die because human versus bear wins, right? But the human strength is collaboration, which is why throughout thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of our evolution, Our dopamine circuits and our feelings and our emotions have all been developed in a way that if you're not in the tribe, you're going to die. So make sure they like you. And if you're in a 200,000 year ago hunter-gatherer society, that's going to help you survive. So good. Make sure you care what people think about you. If they think, if you feel a bit embarrassed because of something you said or something you did in your day-to-day life, you're not going to die. You're not going to leave you behind and kill you or some shit. Like you're still going to, it's dead. It's fine. They're not going to kill you. Like you're going to, chill, bro. You're going to survive. So it's for me a lot of overcoming these kind of mental afflictions. The best way I found it is just the more and more I read about human nature, the more and more I read about evolution, the more and more I felt like it doesn't bother me as much anymore. Because you understand why. Like when you understand why, the reason behind something, when you understand it, it just can't bother you anymore.
All right, so just to tie in what you said with we were talking about happiness before when you said like the tribal nature of everyone, um, I feel like that's why people are so scared to like happiness is standing out and doing your thing. But I feel like people are so scared to do that because they're scared to be judged. And I feel like people judging you doesn't hurt you. As I know in your head and in human nature, being judged is the end of the world. It feels like you're gonna die. I've struggled with this feeling my whole life. I hate being judged. I really dislike standing out. But sometimes the key to happiness and the key to feeling fulfilled in life is standing out and being different, even if you're being judged. And when you get over being judged like that, that is where happiness comes from.
So when you say that you've faced this a lot of times in your life, you think you faced it through wrestling or what other like life experience was it really where you felt this really emotion?
Like the fear of being judged, you mean? Yeah. I mean, just like everything, like presentations in school. I mean, for a while, I didn't tell people that I wrestled because it was like, oh, you wrestle? Ew, that's weird. But like, I don't care anymore. It's wrestling. It's a part of my life. It's cool.
Did people really find it like weird in middle school?
I wouldn't say it was middle. I feel like by middle school, people were over it. But like when I was in fourth grade and I was wrestling and I told the kids in my class I wrestled, they're like, you wrestle? Who wrestles? That's weird. And like standing out like that, even if it was for something I was proud of, I loved wrestling. It just didn't feel good. So I avoided it for so long. And avoiding being true to myself like that didn't make me happy. So it's just so like even as being judged is bad, avoiding what you're being judged for a lot of the times is worse.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like you really got to find ways to um overcome that fear because once you do overcome that fear of failure, that fear of embarrassment, the fear of being judged, then you'll really start to see like how great your life can become, right? Because when you a lot of people hold back, they're like they'll stay in their zone of comfort, they're staying in their zone of complacency, and you don't really feel alive in life. I don't feel like you can really start living life for real until you escape that. Until you start saying that there's this thing I kind of want to do, but I have all these barriers. And sure enough, you're gonna have barriers. You're gonna have things holding you back. I think the more and more you can learn to overcome them, I think for me, I've only overcome those barriers by consuming a lot of content from people who regularly overcome those barriers, right? And I'm hoping that we can create more of that content here. But, finding people you look up to, finding people who have the mindsets that you want and you want to use in order to reach whatever goal you have set for yourself. The better you can get at overcoming those barriers and taking more risks, doing more things out of your own individual thinking and individual instincts about what truly would make you fulfilled, and doing that, the more and more you'll start to see the greater beauties of life. Sure, and sure you'll see those emotional extremes, but the emotional extremes serve both ways. They might make you very, very sad in a brief moment, but they'll also make you more and more happy than you ever knew was even possible, right? And maybe you felt that through some of the things that you've done in the past.
Like, I mean, you mentioned those emotional extremes, but I would go a step back even, just like average emotions. Like, if you get over those barriers and if you find people to look up to and find ways to achieve what you want, on average, you'll be happier, not just for brief moments. Sure, there will be moments of extreme happiness and extreme sadness, but on average, when you find those things, your average happiness, where your emotions are day to day, minute to minute, hour to hour, week to week, month to month, year to year, you'll be happier.
Yeah, and I think the reason it's hard for people to really believe that or even see that is because it's so hard to see how your mind develops over time, right? That like for example, like you might start a habit like meditation, right? Meditation is a habit that's supposed to improve your mental health, but you don't actually see it doing anything for you, right? Because the progress is so invisible. You'll see that, okay, I've been doing this every day. It's supposed to make me my mental health better. It's supposed to make me more present. But if you do it every day, the progress is so slow and so invisible that you don't even see the progress for a lot of the time. But I guarantee if you put me in the shoes of where I was 2 years ago, when I feel how my brain and my texture of my mind felt in those 2 years contrasting, it's going to be fundamentally so different, right? And I think it applies back to this situation as well. Like you don't believe that this will make you more happy or less happy, but when you put yourself back in the zone where you were in before, then you'll really see the contrasting, and then you'll just be like, wow, life feels this much different, and it's almost insane.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned going back 2 years like that. You were not the same person. No one is the same person unless you're like 96 and nothing has happened. But no one's the same person they were 2 years ago. So much happens, like, so much in your life can change in a day that 712 days, that's how many? Wait, 365. 730 days, right?
Wait, hold on. 365 plus 365, 600. Oh, yeah, 730. You're good.
Okay, 730 days, each one where it could be such a drastic change like that, that as a person, you're going to change completely in 2 years. So it's what you do with that time, like how you're changing, what you're changing, how your view of the world changes in those in any space of time is what's most important.
Yeah, bro, 100%. So you talk about this concept of willful ignorance. Tell me what that is.
I like this one. I mentioned this as a problem in the world. It's people refusing to learn. Like people who refuse to change, people who are so stuck in their ways, so stuck in what life was before that they won't learn anything new. They won't take advantage of what's happening. Like, okay, let's go for an extreme example. Racists, people who are like homophobic people or sexist people who are like, well, back in the day, it was fine. It's not fine. It was never fine. You refuse to acknowledge that it was fine. People who don't learn and don't change, that it hurts the world so much because people like that make ill-informed decisions and it ends up and they hurt the world in ways they don't understand because they can't understand because they refuse to learn.
Why do you think people refuse to learn?
Um, some people are lazy or they find what they know comforting. They find I think some people are scared of new things, like scared of some people are just scared of being wrong. So if they've had an idea for 20 years and suddenly they could learn that it was incorrect and that they've lived their life under false pretenses, that would mess a lot of people up and they are scared of that, which I think that's probably why, but
Yeah, the more and more you talk about this, the more it reminds me back of the thing we talked about before with the making the world less chaotic, right? There's a term for this called confirmation bias, where you have a set of mental models that you've developed through your life experiences and your parents and society that make the world less chaotic. That if you believe in these set of things, then okay, the world has more order and it's more simple to understand. The second someone questions that, second someone says that maybe this piece is wrong, maybe that there's something to be learned here, they will hug tightly to the thing that they already know is true because they don't want their beliefs questioned, right? Which is why someone who might be eating unhealthy, right? They might be having a lot of sugar in their diet, and someone tells them that that might be bad for them. They might know it's probably true, right? But they'll cling so much to the thing that they've been doing consistently over time because not only have they developed it as a habit, but they hold on to it because that is their source of order in the world, right? The habits and the routine they've been into for so long. And second, someone questions their belief, there's a potential it might be right. There's a potential that maybe this is bad for me. They don't want to see that reality, so they'll run away from it.
yeah, like people like as by nature, people are scared of being wrong. Like I've found that people will die on any hill and over any argument just to say they were right. Even if they know they're wrong or even if they know they're only 10% right, they will fight over it forever because being wrong is so much scarier to them than anything else. And they're so resistant to change because that meant that they were wrong. And being wrong, they can't handle that. It's because it just like because it means that they weren't just wrong in that moment. It meant that they had been wrong and that they had been living life wrong, and that the order, the comfort, the lack of chaos that they had come to enjoy was going to be over, and they were going to be back in where they were before they had this idea.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, dude. The piece that I've been living life wrong this whole time is scary. So we can't really blame the people who have willful ignorance, right? I just think that maybe we need a new approach, right? Maybe we need to approach it in a way where we're not directly criticizing them. Because to go back to the previous example, if you criticize someone for eating unhealthy, is it going to change their behavior? Well, maybe because they're clinging on to their own old behaviors, it probably won't. But if we can approach it in a new way, where we don't directly, I actually made a video about this, but how we can help to change people by not directly criticizing them, but opening, I think there was a strategy I developed from reading this book that you can help someone make change better instead of directly criticizing them. You can start by praising them to open it out in a more of a positive way and kind of highlight it in a way that they're making a mistake that you've made before and fixed. That's a really critical one, right? Like instead of me telling someone that stop eating like 3 donuts a day, like it's not good for you or something, I could be like, I'll first probably praise them, saying that, oh yeah, I've been seeing you started exercising recently, or anything you could find something to praise them about, right? Anything that's related to it in some way. Like, sure, they might be eating 3 donuts, but maybe they've been trying to go on a walk once a day, bare minimum exercise, or they've going on a run once a week, or they went to the gym that one time. So I would talk to them about that. So we're talking about, oh yeah, remember the time we went to the gym like that one time 2 months ago? And you're like, oh, he's like, oh, it was hard, it was hard. But then you start praising them, like, you actually did quite a good job at the gym. You actually performed quite well. Like you actually did better than I thought you would do. And then you go and tell them a story about yourself and somehow paint the story so that's in exactly of their situation. You know, Christopher, back 3 years ago, I was totally out of shape. I was eating 3 donuts a day and I was not lifting at all. But then something hit me that someone told me that if I start cutting down the sugar over time and I start lifting more, then it would improve my life. And I listened to them for a period of time and it helped me, right? I think telling them that this is a problem that you fix, telling them, giving them praise, I think it can help them fix the willful ignorance piece because getting them more wanting to learn, right? I think we can also do a piece ourselves in helping people overcome that.
Like you mentioned, giving them a story. Like, I think relating it to yourself is important, but you have to relate it to yourself and show how it's made you better. Like just saying, "Oh, this is something I overcame." If they're like, "So what? You overcame it? I don't care." But if you're like, "Yeah, I overcame it, and it also I got I was 3 times happier. I performed better at my job. I got a promotion. I had more energy in life. I was happier when I was talking to people. More people liked me. Like stuff like that." And like you have to connect that to everything. You have to give them a reason for why they would want to do it, why they'd want to learn, why they'd want to change. And then maybe you'll strike their interest because even if they're scared of being wrong, most people will often jump at an opportunity to make their lives better because people want to be happier by nature. So if you find a way to convince them that it'll make them happier, then you might be able to get people to want to learn.
Yeah, 100%, bro. I'm thinking we gotta title this podcast "The Impact of Stories on Human Nature." That's literally every time keeps coming back to the same idea of stories, bro.
Yeah, stories and human nature. It's been like an overarching theme. We didn't even do this on purpose. It's crazy.
When I started the podcast, like we're 18 episodes in, right? But I'm happy about it. I'm happy I've been pretty consistent with it. But one thing I've been reading about recently about how I can improve my own podcasting, because I think that there are so many pieces that go into it. And if I have free time, I'll try to find ways I can improve as a podcaster as well. One thing I see a lot of people talk about is the importance of incorporating stories into videos or podcasts, right? Because stories there's something that's so innate in human nature about stories that if you could tell a good story, they will remember it, right? And I think today, like with the Wawa story and stuff, you could say a life lesson, but if you put a story around it, it makes it that much memorable in their mind. Like they might be walking away from this podcast, remembering the time when I ordered Wawa, and it'll remind them about the importance of being gratitude for life, right? So, you know, hot stories, bro. Human nature. I'm gonna keep trying to tell more stories, but bro, I love it. It's insane.
I mean, also stories just make everything seem so much more relatable. Like, oh yeah, I could have ordered Wawa. That's 100% a thing I can do. And if it didn't come, it would have made me think like that. And I mean, well, it connects. Not only does it bring them into it, but it connects it to their life for the rest of what they're thinking and how they're approaching life.
And especially for people that are maybe at a higher level, right? Like if I'm talking to a Navy SEAL or I'm talking to a national wrestling champion, right? There's probably going to be a distance between some message they're giving and someone who's receiving the message, like way, way down here, right? But through, as you said, the story makes it more relatable, right? And if national wrestling champion is talking about his story when I'm not saying that that's me, but as an example, if they're talking about a story which can be related, like he or Wawa, national wrestling champion or Wawa, then even someone who may not be at that level can understand the story and take away the key lessons in a way that can be used as a communication factor between different parties in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes like people of all levels, if you can make a story relatable, you can get a message to anyone.
All right, man. You say that the happiest moments of your life were when you won a wrestling match. I mean, you wrote a couple things like traveling with your cousins, soccer matches, but the first one you wrote was winning a wrestling match. So talk to me about that.
I didn't have like a specific match in mind. I meant to change it to winning every wrestling match, but I don't know if I ever did before I submitted it. But anyway, what I meant by that was there's no, I've never had a feeling like getting my hand raised. I mean, I've tried to, I try to be a happy person. I try to do things that make me happy, but nothing will ever compare. The memory of it won't compare. Nothing I've experienced at least. Maybe some people can relate to things that make you just as happy. But for me, nothing brightens up my day. Nothing makes me feel better than having won a wrestling match. Because a wrestling match, like if I had to compare a wrestling match to something just athletically, it would be like running a mile while curling dumbbells the whole time. I mean, it's a hard thing to do. Like even at the end of that, even if I don't win and it's a close match, especially against someone good, I feel happy after a wrestling match. But if it's, I mean, just winning is just it's such an accomplishment. No matter who you beat, no matter who the match is against, just winning is such a I mean, there's no other sport where winning feels like it does in wrestling because you've there's no excuses to be made really. It's you and someone else. So even though like I'm like it's not like oh I've proved I'm better than them. That's what really makes me happy. I mean that's part of it. I mean it's there's so many different things. Just the athleticism it requires, the tax on my body. I mean nothing else can compare to winning a wrestling match in the way that it just in the way that it makes me feel fulfilled.
Talking to people, I've noticed that there's a consistent theme that the glory of winning a match doesn't seem to last very long, right? That you may win a match and it feels good for a couple hours, but either you're focused on getting the next match or you're focused on something next. Would you say that you fall into a similar boat where like the victory doesn't feel like it lasts long, or do you think that you're able to enjoy it and it's fulfilling to you for a period of time?
No, I'd 100% agree that the glory goes away very quickly. I mean, I even mentioned it before. I said, like, the memories of it don't bring me happiness. Like, I mean, no matter who I beat, there's always, well, yeah, they could have been better. So it doesn't really count. But, like, in that moment, and even in the few hours afterwards, there's no criticism that could be made that will take you off that high. But eventually, adrenaline rush is over. You're enough removed that you can look at it objectively and you can say, well, there's still I need to fix this and this and this and this and this and this and this for every match. And well, I've got 6 matches in the next week that I got to prepare for, so it's always back to work. But in the moment after the match, it's not back to work. So I'd say that's the difference between right after the match and well, a few hours removed.
All right, bro. I really enjoyed talking to you today. We went through a lot of your lessons. You had many amazing stories to share, wrestling, human nature. We touched on a lot, quite a bit. So I'll be enjoying sitting back and editing this one. But yeah, bro, anything you want to finish with?
No, I had a good time today. This was fun. This was honestly better than I thought it would be. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you for coming down, and I'll see you tomorrow at practice.
See you, man.
Peace.
Peace.
If you enjoyed that episode with Chris Horsch, and you're going to love this podcast right here that I recorded with Oliver Goodman, click here to watch that video right now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.